Hello, and welcome to my first video talking a little bit about Microsoft Office products. Uh, my hope for the series is to provide a few different trainings on Microsoft and provide some general information. I won't get into a lot of detail right now. I figured I'd just jump right in with a topic I think most of you will find interesting, especially anybody who works with Excel and a lot of data, and that is pivot tables. This is just going to be kind of a really quick introduction overview of what a pivot table is and how to create one from a very large data set. So, without any further ado, let's jump right in. So to start with, I'm going to show you my demo file, which is a file I downloaded from Weather Underground, which has information from the Philadelphia airport. And this is weather data that I downloaded from their site, which covers January 1st, 2014, all the way down to December 31st, 2014. So 1 year's worth of data that tells you basically what the conditions were. It is what's called a comma separated value list. So you have all these commas, and then at the end of each row of data, there's a carriage return. So it's a very common kind of data file that you might get from a sensor, from someone else, and something that Excel is pretty good at working with. So what I'm going to do, actually, I had Excel open. Let me quit Excel all the way out so we can start right from the beginning. Now, one thing I will say is I am on a Mac and I'm using the 2016 version of Microsoft Office. What I'm going to show you should work with older versions, and it should also work with versions in Word, or I'm sorry, on Windows. So don't worry about, I don't have the latest version, so I can't use this. Things might be a little bit different. They might be in a little bit different place, but in general, you should be able to follow along. So I'm going to open this on my Mac, and this is the folder on my desktop, demo files, and this is my file. So I select it and click open. And now Excel is smart enough to know that this is not an Excel file. It doesn't end in .xls or .slx, as an older file might. So it assumes it's a text file and it's a delimited file. So we can use the default here and hit next. Now it defaults to a tab delimited, but obviously we're comma, so we want to select just the comma. You can select most of these. The only one I wouldn't select is space, unless you're really dealing with a space delimited file. That'll do some funky things. Now we could just hit finish here. However, our first row of data is a date field. And to make our lives a little bit easier so we don't have to do much post-processing, I'm going to tell Excel that it is a date field. Now it defaults to month, day, year, but I notice it's got the year, the month, and the day. So I can tell Excel exactly how this data is, and that way I don't have to worry about going in and formatting it and fixing it. Hit finish, and there I am. Excel has now taken all my data and put it into a file that I can easily manipulate. It's got the headers tell me what the data is, and it's got the data fields themselves. So now that I have my data in one place, in one location, I can create a pivot table. Before I do, though, however, I wanted to tell you just a few things. One thing is, the most important thing is make sure you don't have any blank columns in here. You're not missing a column of data. If you are, then when you go to do your pivot table, Excel's not really going to like it, and it's going to give you an error. So you want to make sure you have just one continuous row of data, or columns of data. In the rows, it's a little bit less important. There can be missing data fields. However, you'll want to make sure you do select all your data. So quick, I'll show you a trick. You can obviously click and drag and select data, but that takes a while. Might not be too bad here since we only have 365 records plus a header row, but if we had a lot of data, it could be very troublesome. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to show you a quick trick on how to select all rows, all columns of just your data. So on a Mac, I'm going to hit Command and Shift. On Windows, I would hit Control and Shift and hold this down, and I'm going to be at the top leftmost cell of my data, and I hit the right arrow. And that goes ahead across and selects all my column headings. Now, if you might have guessed it, while still holding Command Shift or Control Shift, I'm going to hit the down arrow, and that'll select all my rows of data. Again, if I have any blanks on that left-hand column, it'll only go to the nearest blank, so then I might have to hit the down arrow a few times. Luckily in this data set, it's a contiguous data set. So there we are. We have all our data selected. So now we're going to come up to Insert, And on Windows, it might still be under data. I don't remember exactly, but you're going to go to Insert and Pivot Table. And so the first thing that the wizard does is it gives you the data range that you selected, and it lets you choose where you want to place your pivot table. Now, I always default to new worksheet. It just makes life easier. You can have a worksheet with multiple pivot tables on. However, when you start manipulating them and changing them, it can do weird things, including deleting rows and adding rows and things like that. And so it can really screw up other stuff. So I like to just have one worksheet per pivot table. So basically, I use defaults. I hit next. Now, we are dealing with weather data. So one of the things we're probably interested in are date-based measurements. So we're going to start with our Eastern Standard Time and put that in our rows. Then, since this is an airport, we might want to be interested in how things generally work. So that might be why we're looking at this data. We want to know on average what are the temperatures and things like that. So let's start with our mean temperature. Mean is just another word for average. Now, it defaults to creating a sum. We click on the little I here. It shows us different functions that Microsoft Excel will perform on our data. Most common are sum, count, average, max, min, and so on. Sum is done on numerical data. If you had text-based data, you could do a count. You can also average your numeric data, take the max of it, take the min of it. So in this case, I'm going to hit average because I'm interested in the average temperature. So we might scroll down. Maybe we're also interested in the average humidity. Again, it's going to give me the sum. I'm going to change that to average. No big deal. Then if I keep going, maybe I'm interested in that. Maybe here I'm interested in the max wind gust. Maybe I really want to know what's the most wind this might get. And here, sum or average isn't appropriate. Here I want the max. And then lastly, because it is an airport, it is affected by weather, I'm interested in rain events or precipitation. There it defaulted to a count. However, I know it's numerical data, so I tell it to give me the sum, the total. And actually, all this information is exactly the same as it is in our sheet here. If we look at, just look at January 1st, our mean temperature was 32, our mean humidity was 51, and we had 0 inches of rain. Temperature, humidity, 0 inches of rain. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, what do we really do? Well, this is just the start of our pivot table. So what a pivot table is really good at, it's really good at taking lots of data and kind of organizing it and summarizing it for us. And so in the case of a lot of weather data, we might be interested in things like not just daily measurements, but we might be interested in monthly, quarterly, yearly measurements. If we're dealing with where we got a lot of measurements each day, we might want to summarize those up to the day level. So what we'll use for that is group selection. So if I hit group selection, I'm given options, group, ungroup, or group a field. In this case, I want to group a selection. Now, because we told Excel that we're dealing with date information, it automatically says, wait a minute, these are dates. What do I want to do? And so I can go all the way down to seconds, all the way up to years. Now, obviously, I'm limited by the type of data I have. We only have it at days, and if we hit days, we basically get the same data we have. Matter of fact, if we hit any of these, it wouldn't give us really anything different at all. But again, I'm not interested in days. I'm more interested in months. So I can hit months, I can hit quarters, so I'm interested in how it is throughout the year. Or if I have more than 1 year's worth of data, if I had, for example, 10 years worth of weather data, I might want to see how 2013 looked compared to 2014, so I could do years. But here I'm just going to default to months. I'm going to hit OK. And now I can look at this on how it looks over each month in the year. So what am I looking at here? I'm looking at, on average, the temperature is below freezing in January. On average, it's highest in July at 78 degrees. My humidity is, looks like, lowest in March and highest on average in September. Wind gusts range from about 36 miles an hour up to about 58 miles an hour. So you get some pretty gusty wind. And then if I'm looking at my total rainfall, I can see that it looks like April is about the wettest month I have. And probably September was the driest month I had. So you can see I can pretty quickly go in, take a lot of information, summarize it down, and look at some trends pretty quickly. So anyway, like I said, I just want to kind of give a quick introduction to what a pivot table is, show you how you might want to use it. Obviously, there's a lot of other things you can do. You can not only do pivot tables, but you can also add other things like slicers and filters and other things of that nature. And I'm going to show you that probably in the next couple videos. For now, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something about pivot tables. And like I said, this is hopefully the first in quite a few videos that deal with the Microsoft Office products and provide some information on how to use them, some of the tips, tricks, and cool features that I've learned over 25 years of using these products. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.